This is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, and today I thought I'd talk a little bit about banjo backup. I remember doing a podcast with Kristen Scott Benson a few months ago, and I asked her, when somebody comes to her for lessons that's been playing for a little while, maybe has some tunes under their belt, some techniques, some licks, some rolls, what was the thing that she identified as maybe something that was lacking in common amongst people of that skill level, maybe advanced beginner or beginning intermediate player. And of course she said it will vary from one player to the next, but in general she felt like they were lacking in their backup or accompaniment skills. And that's not unusual, because when you first learn how to play, you're wanting to play some songs, you're wanting to play solos, and that's fine, well, and good. But eventually, at some time, it would be wonderful to spend some time learning something about backup. Because if you think about it, if you're in a jam session or you're playing with a band on stage, most of the time you're going to be accompanying somebody else. You're going to be backing them up. Your solo doesn't take that long. In a 3-minute song you might have one solo, maybe two, depending on how many musicians are in the ensemble, but the rest of the time you're going to be playing backup. And the better you can get at backup, the better you can get at making other people sound good, whether it's the singer or other instrumentalists, the more desirable you're going to be as far as people wanting you to join them and play in their jam or in their band. And there's a real art to accompaniment and backup, no matter what instrument you're playing on. I think that the masters of backup and accompaniment and rhythm work every bit as hard at that as they do as their lead solos or their singing or whatever else they're doing. So if you want to be somebody that everybody wants to have in the jam, spending time with your backup as well as your solo playing is a great thing to do. Now, first thing, before I show any kind of techniques on the banjo for backup and accompaniment, I want to just talk about what backup rhythm and accompaniment players in general, what they do, what are their goals as far as what they're trying to provide for the singer or the soloist. And number one, and probably most importantly, is timing. You want to be very solid with your timing. Number two is providing a harmonic content, which means providing a chord structure, right? And we'll talk about the various roles of each member of the band in a second, but those two things are primary. Is you're providing a chord structure or a harmonic content to the song, and you're providing hopefully good solid timing. The third thing you probably want to do is add some interest, meaning you're not going to do stuff that's just monotonous, the same rhythm lick over and over and over again. You want to add a little bit of interest to that. Also, you want to help the listener's ear identify the next chord change. Now, things like passing chords and bass runs and stuff like that, or how you can do that. You want to sort of signal to the listener that a chord change is coming, and various members of the ensemble have that job more to more of a degree than others, but we'll talk about that too. The next thing you want to do is you want to not only provide timing and harmonic content, and that would include helping draw the listener to the next chord change, and interest. In providing that interest, you want to really help support the vocalist and the other instrumentalist. You want to make them sound better. You want to provide something that will help them stick out and sound really good. And you also want to help them tell their story. You want to tell the story, present the emotion, the feel, the groove of the song in such a way that you improve the overall sound of the ensemble. Now in a full bluegrass band, you've got different people that are providing different parts of that. The bass player, of course, is providing the timing content on the downbeat primarily. And if they're a bass player that likes to use some bass runs, that's going to help move the listener's ear to the next chord change. And of course, they're outlining the chord, whether it just be a root fifth idea or a root third fifth. In their bass playing, they're outlining that chord. Now the guitar player is doing the same thing. They're outlining the chord with their strum, and they're usually providing the downbeat and the backbeat when they're doing their boom, chick, type of rhythmic content. And that's going to be downbeat, backbeat, downbeat, backbeat. And of course that can vary. You can fully subdivide, meaning you're playing eighth note rhythm instead of quarter note rhythm, and we can get into all of that kind of stuff later and how you might do that on the banjo. And then the mandolin is providing this backbeat chop. If the bass is providing the downbeat boom, then the mandolin is usually providing a percussive backbeat chop if you've got a mandolin. Now on a banjo you can do that too, and we'll talk about that, and sometimes the dobro will also provide that, sometimes the fiddle will be doing a little chunk as well. But what you want to think about overall is what's there and what's not there, and you want to provide what's not there. So you got to listen, okay? If the mandolin player and maybe the dobro player are doing the offbeat chunk, the vamp so to speak, do you really want to do that too, or do you want to do something else? You want to make those kind of decisions. You don't want everybody doing the same thing. Now, if the mandolin player is the only guy in the ensemble doing that backbeat chop, and they take their solo, then maybe you want to fill in there, because that's, again, that's not there anymore. But maybe the dobro player is picking it up. You got to listen and see what's there and what's not there, and fill in the gaps. That's basically your goal. Now, the way I look at it in a broad spectrum for banjo, you've got three main sort of approaches to rhythm and backup. You can do your boom chick, kind of like you're playing a bass note if you got a G chord, right? So you're providing a downbeat and then a backbeat with a vamp, meaning I'm playing this full chord on the first, second, and third strings, and I'm lifting up my fingers to cut that sound off. I'm not going. I'm chopping that off. Not to say you can't let those things ring. Sometimes you may want to do that. There's a lot of variations here, and there's a lot of different things you can do, but we're just going to talk about a few basic things. You can do that. So I'm going to call that the vamp, and there's a lot of variations, a lot of various things you could do there. You can not play the downbeat, you can just play the backbeat, you can use chord inversions, we'll talk about that in a second, but there are a lot of things you can do in what I call the umbrella of the vamp, okay? Now the next thing would be rolls, okay? If you've got a guitar player, a bass player, mandolin player in the band, and you're the banjo, right? Nobody else is rolling. You know, the only other person that might be rolling, if you have it in there, is the dobro player. Some bands, they like that banjo to roll the whole time. Like, you know, I've interviewed banjo players that have played with Jimmy Martin, and Jimmy Martin liked that banjo roll more than the vamp. And so, again, it's going to see what kind of music the band's playing, how it fits into what the other instruments are doing. You're going to want to just study and learn where these things fit best. So, and we'll go over some roll type backups, okay? And then the third umbrella, so to speak, of a basic backup for or accompaniment for the banjo is your fill licks, okay? And that's usually stuff you're going to provide when the singer takes a pause to breathe, or between a vocal line. You might fill in the gap there with something. And you might do simpler fills when the singer is singing, and more complex fills when the singer pauses. So let's take a look at some of this stuff, and we'll just cover some basics in each of these categories today, and maybe later we'll get in some more intricate things and some more details on how to combine these things. But today, let's just cover a few little vamp techniques, a few little roll sort of patterns that you might use, and some more complex fill stuff. Now again, what you want to be conscious of the whole time is not getting in the singer's way, not getting in the other instrumentalist's way, but providing a foundation for them to build from without taking away something from something they're doing, okay? And that's just something you learn to do by becoming aware of what's going on and by listening. So, and that comes with experience. But let's just start today with a few basics in each of those kind of rhythm and accompaniment categories for banjo. All right, okay, now the first thing we'll talk about is that vamp. And like I demonstrated before, you'll hit a downbeat with your, usually on this D string, right? On the low D string, and then do that pick up, like so. That kind of thing. Now, you can also do it without the downbeat. You could do like so. Again, if you got the bass and the guitar and you don't want to repeat that downbeat, you can just do the chop, kind of like the mandolin might be doing. And again, if the mandolin's there, but they take their solo, then you might want to fill that in. So this is two ways to do it. One is with the downbeat, and the other is without. A good way to practice that is put a metronome on and then let the metronome be the bass, and then you use that as a click, bam, you know, let the click hit, and then you just play the offbeat, click, 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 so you can practice it that way to get your timing down. The next thing to do along the vamp line is to play an inversion. Now a chord inversion is just changing the order of the notes, and basically on a banjo for major chords you have three inversions. One is what we might refer to as a G shape, the other is what we might refer to as a D shape here. So for G, you might do that just to add interest. And there I mixed it up. One time I was doing the downbeat, the other time I wasn't. So you can go back and forth with that. The other inversion you have is this, like playing the open G, like a C chord would be there, right? I don't use that too often. Usually if I'm going to do inversions in backup, I'm going to use this shape and this shape. Unless I'm doing something like in a song like Salt Creek that is a real quick C chord, I might like that and play that bar C. I just fold that down and go right back to my G chord if it's something like quick like that, like in Salt Creek or Gold Rush, there's a quick C chord, and so you might add that inversion there. But most often I'm going to do an inversion, just that shape and then this shape here, which is, I'm sorry, and, which is our D shape just moved up, you know, D, E, F, up to G. And you can move it quickly, you could play one for a measure or two and then move the other. Again, that's along that category of providing interest and not being monotonous about it, and it just provides a little bit of different texture when you go to that inversion. Now another thing you can do, instead of just doing a simple vamp like this, is we could start to subdivide, and I'll go into this one subdivide technique. And subdividing, I meaning you're not just playing the 1, 2, 3, 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You count 4 times, you're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and when I'm doing this technique, I'm not playing any ands, I'm playing the numbers, you know. But if I can get into playing some of the ands in various ways, the first way I like to show is like this. And I'll tab that out, but basically you're doing your vamp, you're going bass note and your 3-note pinch, and then you're hitting the second string and then pinching on the 1 and the 3. And again, I'm leaving the 3rd beat out. If I didn't leave the 3rd beat out, it would be like... That gets a little bit too busy, so I like to go just... And now, that sounds really cool if you do your inversion. You're going to go... like so. And then you could do the same thing on any chord. I'm just doing it on the G chord right now. If you had a 1-4-5 progression, G, C, D, you could do that over the whole thing. Or you could mix all that up. Mix up all those different vamping techniques. So for today, let's just stick with that as far as our vamp. We got our bass note chunk. We got just the chunk without the bass note. We got our bass note. We could do the 1 and the 3, or just leave that 3rd beat out. So I'm playing on the 1, the 2, leaving the 3rd out, playing on the and of the 3, and then playing the 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4, like that. And you'll see that in the tablature. I have a little rest symbol in that space. So, you know, for now, just work on that stuff. Just work on those vamps and get them down solid. Mix them up. Play different inversions on different chords. Get used to that before you move on to something else. I find, and this is something else I talked to Chris and Scott Benson about, I find that if you take just one technique and just do it over and over and over again and use it as much as possible until it kind of becomes second nature, then you can move on to the next technique and add that in. Don't try to swallow too many rhythm techniques all at once, because you won't have a natural feel for where they go unless you've spent time with each one of them. So just spend time with this vamp, or you know, spend time with some of the simpler ones, and then when you get those under the belt, try something a little bit more complicated, then try with the inversion. And do all that stuff over and over and over again. And when you change the chord, you might do one technique, go to the next chord, do the different technique. You know, just, you know, work it all out, try to mess around with it, try to mix it up, and you'll start to get a feel for when to use these things and when they sound good. Okay, so that's the basic vamp category. Okay, in today's lesson I did a lot of talking, but that'll provide a foundation of the way I look at rhythm and accompaniment, and we'll go on from here. I don't like to have these videos last much longer than 15 minutes. We've already gone over that for today's lesson. In the next lesson, I'll talk about the roll technique, how to work in your rolls, just constant rolling and moving from one chord to another while you keep that roll going in backup and accompaniment, how to use that. And then if we have time next time after we do some roll patterns, then I'll get into some other fills, more complex things up the neck, some of my favorite ones. And then we'll just build from there. You know, as we go along, every few weeks I'll just maybe throw in a new rhythm and accompaniment thing on the banjo and intersperse that with some lead stuff, okay? So for now, work on your vamp, work on those different vamps when you're playing accompaniment on the banjo. Get some records on if you don't have a jam session to go to, or you're not in a band. Put some records on, go to Spotify or wherever you listen, YouTube, wherever you listen to music. Put the Bluegrass Album Band or somebody like that on there, Flat and Scruggs, and just try to play along and back the whole thing up with your banjo. That's a great exercise to get any of these backup and accompaniment skills under your belt. So until next time, this is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine.